Welcome to Leadership from the Heart, the podcast that dives deep into the world of operational focused leadership. I'm your host, Romie, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on the journey of discovery, growth, and transformation. In each episode, we'll explore the essential principles of effective leadership that not only drive results, but also touch the very core of the human connection. At Leadership from the Heart, we believe that leadership is more than just a title. It's a commitment to inspire, empower, and guide with authenticity and compassion. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Leadership from the Heart. I am your host, Romie, and today I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to take a couple steps back and talk about my journey through leadership and how I got here. So I take you back to about 2002, transferred to high school. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I am part of a basketball team that was pretty good, right? And so I've always been a really hard worker. And so I became kind of like the sixth or seventh person. I wasn't a starter in high school, but I tried really, really hard to be. And didn't really lead the team, but I knew that I had maybe some leadership skills, but I wasn't sure what they were. I didn't know they were leadership skills at the time. So started to practice really, really hard summer of senior year just to tear my ACL, unfortunately, in a preseason basketball game. So shifted my focus from basketball just to life, regular life at that point, after having gone through all the emotions or the grieving process that you go through when you tear your ACL senior year, and you had pretty big hopes of playing in college. So fast forward through, high school now into, early adulthood. And I remember my mom always asking me, if everyone, jumps off a bridge, are you going to jump off a bridge? And I always thought, like, she thinks I'm a follower, but I don't think I'm following anyone. I'm pretty sure I'm making my own decisions here, and I'm thinking through things more than she thinks I am. But I don't want to ever tell her that, because obviously she thought the decisions I was making weren't good decisions. So if she knew that I was thinking through them and still having made those decisions, things would probably get worse. But anyway, I landed a job years later in a locksmith company, and I started off as a file clerk or something like that. And quickly, I think they saw that I had some decent skills, some decent work ethic, and they moved me to the warehouse part of the business where there was nobody. And so they gave me this task, or they started to teach me a little bit about inventory and about how process, operations, right? So behind the scenes, this is what happens. A key gets used, we get an order, we, replenish and all these things. And the father of the owner really took me under his wing. His name was Alan. Alan is doing well. He was a lot older back then. So if he's not on earth anymore, Alan, thank you so much for everything. And so Alan started to teach me Excel, and he spoke a lot of life into me. He always told me how smart he thought I was and how much he saw in me to lead. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. This is pretty cool. And I picked up quickly. I was a fast learner. I still am a fast learner, and worked through that job for a year or two, and then went to Comcast Cable, which was one of the best jobs I'd say I've ever had. I think that organization just, they know the direction in which they want to go, and they go in that direction. And when you're in it, it doesn't always feel that way. But I can honestly say that, having not been there for the last 10 years, I can see the difference, and I can only imagine where they are right now as an organization. So kudos to Comcast and the growth that I had there, the exponential growth that I had there. It was at Comcast that I went there, kind of took a step back pay-wise, and knew that I was a hard worker. So I would work the overtime that I needed in order to pay my bills, which was not a hard thing to do. And then we had a new boss early on. So, anytime you get a new boss, everybody gets a little worried. Sorry, that's my dog scratching himself. So anytime you get a new boss, everybody gets worried. And he was really cool. His name is Jack Saunders. And he was a really cool guy from Tennessee or Augusta, Georgia, actually. And he just saw stuff. He saw stuff in us that nobody had seen before. It was almost like that Gangster's Paradise or the Michelle Pfeiffer movie where, this middle-aged white guy comes into, well, we had North Days, so North Miami, and had us perform at a level we had never performed at. It was something special to see and be part of. And I took note, he, again, like Alan, saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself. And I was working with my best friend at the time, and she kind of got me the job because she was already at Comcast. And he told me, your best friend, Janelle, she's actually better than you as far as like capability and tech and stuff like that. However, she doesn't have the will that you do. And so I knew that I'm not oblivious to that. And he's like, so, I see some leadership in you and I want you to be a lead, but you're going to have to set yourself apart. And of course, that was the beginning of, my whole, there's no way, that's my friend. She got me the job. How can I leapfrog her? Blah, 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 blah. And he was just like, look, Romie, like in life, you're going to find out really early on who your friends are. And so he encouraged me that if she was a true friend, then she would continue to be my friend, even though I became the lead of our group, of our department. And so I took his advice and I became the lead and really went under his wing. If I thought Alan was teaching me Excel, what Jack taught was like next level stuff to me. At the time it was formulas and formatting and conditional this, and it was amazing, right? And so learned all that, understood, started to watch his leadership and kind of study the way he got us to move, because it was all psychology. It wasn't anything other than like servant leadership. That's what he was showing me. And he always told me, you need to be able to say yes to your people as much as possible, so that whenever you have to say no, they know it's real, right? They know they don't have to second guess your no's because you always say yes. And I was just like, okay. And I remember one day he wasn't in, and so I was leading the floor, and he had given a bunch of people off. And so I call him and I'm like, how do you expect me to run with all these people off? Maybe it was like 2 or 3 extra people that he had given the day off. And he said, Romie, if you can't run your business because you have 2 or 3 more people off than you'd like, then you don't know how to run your business. And that was very eye-opening to me. And I took it as a challenge, of course, because I understood what he said, but it took me a second. So I hung up the phone and I was just like, oh, I understand. Just because we don't have the head count doesn't mean all the tasks need to be done today, right? What priorities do we have today? And so we focused on priorities, we got it done. And on that day, I learned that we will always get it done. It may not be as pretty as you want it to be when you have your full head count, but you'll always get it done. And so I've never really worried since then about getting stuff done. Of course, there's a level of stress, unnecessary stress that comes along without having the necessary head count or longer hours and, lack of balance. But I always tell my teams that we will always make it, especially in operations. That's just what operators do. They figure it out. And so I appreciate Jack for that always. And so in watching the way he led, we had a really big project one day, and not one day, it was actually coming up, and we did not know how we were going to do it. It was requiring a level of output that we had never put out before. And so it was we were almost going to have to double our output per day without necessarily working the same hours. And so I said, well, if we just come in 5 hours before our regular time, we can get this done. We literally only need 5 hours of like extreme output. And he's like, yeah, but who's going to do that? And at this time, he had given us so much that it was time to give back. And so I went to the team and I said, we've got this big project. We're going to need some heads. We're going to need to come in like at 1 or 2 a.m. to be able to get out what we need to get out. And sure enough, the 5 or 6 people that we needed stood up. The rest of the team knew that they were going to carry us through, because obviously if we came in at 1 or 2 a.m., we weren't going to be able to be work until 5. And so they committed to carrying us through once we left, like at noon or something like that. And I told Jack what we had come up with, and he was just like taken aback, and that's when I knew that that's the kind of leader I wanted to be. The kind of leader that gave so much, and I now call it making deposits, right? He made so many deposits within us that when it was time to make a withdrawal, the currency was there, and it was just the currency of servant leadership. That's what he was. He was the first one to start to tell us, like, hey, if you guys finish everything you need to do Friday before a holiday, then let's shut it down at 10 or 12. And we'll just do a cookout. We'll do dominoes. We'll do this. And we had never seen that before. We didn't even know that was capable. And so we did that for like 6 months. And then it was time to give back. So here we are in this day one of the output project. And here comes Jack at 2:30 in the morning with Red Bull and donuts and what have you, just to show us that he was up too, to show us that he was standing with us, like in solidarity, which was, I expected no less from him. But again, it showed me what showing up means, right? So of course, we were successful in the project, and thereon after, we were one of the highest performing warehouses, and he had a few of warehouses, but we were one of the highest performing warehouses because of his kind of leadership. And it showed me what true leadership can do, right? It's not all rainbows and butterflies. There are obviously times of conflict, and how to resolve that conflict is just as important as when times are good, right? Because you have to show up. And when you see the conflict, you have to go into it. You cannot avoid conflict. I can't tell you enough how much avoiding or avoidance leadership is not leading at all. It is literally just waiting for the storm to pass. But what happens is whatever happens within that storm just gets worse. And when you think the storm passes, it's not the same place it was before. And so your goal is to have it to be the same place it was before, or better, obviously. And so having gone through that, Jack wanted me to go for a supervisory role and told me, you're not going to get it, but I want you to walk through the interview process, because I think it's important to know what the interview process is like. And did that. In fact, did not get the job, but I understood what the position called for. And then we, centralize our operation. And now I have the opportunity to lead or go for another supervisor position. I get that one. And now I'm leading like this hub, this place of centralized performance or centralized output for the warehouse. And it was such a cool experience. The greatest things about Comcast is their education for their employees, right? In order to be a lead, you have to go through these specific classes that they have. It's called Comcast University. I don't know if it's still called that. It's probably Xfinity University. And then not only do you have to go through it, but you actually have to show knowledge. You have to show that the knowledge is actually being used, which is something that I think a lot of companies miss right now. So went through that to become a lead, went through the time management, all the courses that I needed to become a supervisor, became a supervisor. And it was the greatest stretch position of my life. We changed schedules. We had to lead, I think it was, 150 people, obviously all on different shifts. But it was amazing. It was everything that an early leader would go through. I think I went through there. I went to go get a promotion while I was there as well. And that also did not go through. And I was absolutely devastated by that, because I thought I had what it took, not knowing all that it took. And grateful for those lessons and the redirection that I got there. And then we completely outsourced that entire operation. And that was, I would say, devastating. I did not know how, as an early leader, to react to people losing their jobs. And in fact, losing mine as well. But I felt good about mine. I knew that I was going to be okay. I knew I was employable. I was worried about all my frontline people who weren't going to have a job in whatever 90 days, 120 days that was coming up. And I remember our employee relations person telling us, people are resilient. They're going to be okay. And I was just like, fuck you, dude. Like, you have no idea. But he knew, he knew he had been through this before. I had it. And so going through that process and landing another job where I was, in fact, a manager at that point. And then it was kind of like a contractor for Comcast. And then having gone to where I currently am at Southern Glazers and starting there as a supervisor and working my way up to, driver manager again, and then state transportation manager, and now the director of logistics. I can say that, um, your leadership continues to unfold. Had I known now, obviously had I known then what I know now, obviously life would have been very different. I would have gone for different types of positions, but not but, and I am extremely happy with the outcome and all of the mentors that I've had throughout that. I know that it all started with for me that I can remember. I'm sure that school there were some teachers, and while I was in sports, there were some coaches. I know there were, but my core memories with Alan, and then of course my mentor Jack, who just saw something in me. He saw something in me that I did not know if I saw in myself. And that has been the story of my life, right? Getting to Southern, working for an amazing person, Rick, who also saw something in me and stretched me and kept me going and continued to challenge me throughout my career here at Southern. And it's those people that when they see something in you, you've got to believe them, because if you believe them and if you can lay your confidence or your self-image in their hands for just a second until you can see it yourself, you will be better off, right? And so if you are a leader, I encourage you to see that in someone else who may not be a leader yet or may not be at the level that you are. It's called paying it forward. And if you're not a leader yet and someone sees something in you or someone believes in you, it's your duty to believe it too, or at least to utilize what they see in the interim until you see it in yourself. Because it wasn't until I got maybe 5 or 6 years under my belt and started to lead teams very authentically and lead teams like on my own that I got to start understanding my level of leadership, but more importantly, like my style of leadership. And once I understood my style, because I was able to lead the way I wanted to lead them, it's then that I started to hone in on and like really sharpen those skills and double down on them, because people will definitely question your style of leadership if they don't understand it. And I've had mine questioned as well. And the only thing I could say is just wait. I play the long game, right? I play the game that I know is going to give me return back. And while will give me return back in the long run, but while we're gonna pick up small stuff on the way, we're gonna have some quick wins, and there's fruit on the floor that we can pick up. I'm going for the long run. I want people to know that they're empowered. I want people to know that they matter. I want people to know that we care about them. I want people to know that we are going to show up for them. I want people to know that they can count on us to get them what they need to do the job effectively, appropriately, the way that they need to do the job. I don't want to make life harder for my employees. It is my job to make life easier for them. It is my job to remove the barriers. And in removing the barriers, you do so many other things, right? You can remove the excuses. You can have them show up from themselves, because the same things that you go through, they're going through, right? And vice versa. And if you can just get into that mindset of like understanding them first, you will be a better leader. You will be more understanding. But, I think Theodore Roosevelt says this. Maybe it's Theodore Roosevelt, maybe it's not, but like nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is 100% accurate. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about how smart you are. If you're leading people, you need to care about them first. You need to look out for them. You need to be able to help them balance their well-being, right? Because everybody's got a lot of shit going on out there. And if we can at work make it a better place, a place that is not necessarily making it harder for them to do what they need to do to earn their income so that they can do what they need to do for themselves and their family, then that is our job, right? And it goes, I've said this on many podcasts and videos, but it goes way beyond these office walls. I know that a lot of leaders think that they can, clock in and clock out like everyone else does, but you don't necessarily clock in and clock out. And more importantly, when you do clock in, when you do swipe your badge to walk in that door, it is no longer about you. It is about them. And so you need to do whatever it is you need to do before you walk in there. Get yourself ready for the game. Because once you get in the game, once you clock in, it's all about them and making their life better and listening to them. And yeah, absolutely. Performance is involved. KPIs are involved. Metrics are involved. All of those things need to happen. And there's a strategy for all of that, that we could talk about a little bit more in another podcast, and how you can get the most out of your metrics and your people. I'm going to say step one is absolutely caring about them first and getting them what they need to do their job effectively and believing them, right? That was the one thing Jack did. He just believed. He believed what we said. And when he believed what we said, we felt validated, we felt heard, and there was nothing else to do but produce. And it wasn't produced for Jack. It was produced because we were at our best. While it had everything to do with the freedom that he gave us, it also had nothing to do with him. It was, people go to work to do a good job. Nobody goes to work saying, I want to fuck shit up today. Nobody. And I'm sure there's a few, right? But hardly anybody gets up to go to work to mess things up on purpose. They all want to go do a good job. What that good job is varies greatly for everyone. But if they have the expectation, if they know what's required, and if they feel good about it, they're going to hit the mark every time. Every time. And if they're not hitting the mark, then obviously there's conversation to be had, because there could be something else going on, or just conversation needing to be had, a tough conversation needing to be had. But let's be great leaders and let's go have those conversations. I went off in a tangent. I was supposed to just talk about my story, but I get really passionate about why I became a leader and why I think leadership is so important. It was in getting my first manager role that I started to read all the books about leadership. And I think my first book was like 1 Minute Manager or something like that. And then continue reading like all the Maxwell books, John Gordon that I have right next to me right now, the Simon Sinek, the Brene Browns of the world, all of these great authors that teach us how they lead, right? They're teaching us what they've learned in leadership. And what I've done in reading hundreds of books is like taken the little bits of what I find value in, because you only accept what you find value in, and make them my own, right? I would honestly say that Brene Brown and Simon Sinek are two of my absolute top leadership authors and figureheads. I think that the way they lead is very much the same style as the way I lead. Gary Vee is another one who leads with a lot of empathy and compassion and believes in people first. There are many, but it's in those books that I started to find myself, right? Leaders Eat Last is one of my top books that I recommend to any new leader because it gives you a different framework. It shows you how shows you what the possibilities of leading without the rigid structures that we've been taught. And I found that podcast to be a great paradigm shift. And it has absolutely fundamentally changed the way I lead. And so I think it could have the same impact on anybody else. So I recommend that book to anybody. So here I am recommending it to you as well. I've been to numerous seminars, and I'm a forever learner, and that's why I love the seminars. Any of the companies that I've ever worked for want to send me to, I am a yes. I am a hell yes, because even if there's something I pick up and I take away to be better for my team, to be better for my front line, to be better, period, I will take it, right? I will take it. Uh, and that involves, sometimes having to like stand up and say things and present and public speak and stuff like that. But what I've noticed is that the more you say yes, knees buckling, voice shaking, the easier it gets, right? It never fully goes away, this imposter syndrome thing that we talk about, but you can reframe it into excitement and understand that it's just a whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. It's just a physical reaction that your body's having to your nervousness, right? And so if you can understand that, and one of the seminars that I went in, this amazing speaker taught us that, right? Like, what are the things your body goes through? And we went through it. She's like, okay, now that you can also go through it. And I thought that that was such a wonderful way to put it, because we're always so worried about, it's not that we're worried, it's that once we start to feel the sensations of what should make us run away, that's what we usually do, is run away. And so what she taught us is that if you can feel that, and instead of running away, run to, then you'll have evidence that that works as well. And that was also another huge paradigm shift for me. And yeah, I think that, my leadership journey has taken me through a lot of things, mostly internally, because people will tell you exactly what they think of you. That's okay, right? I believe everything is a redirection, inviting you to a deeper part of you. And I started to see that. I went through all the wanting to be everybody's friend, all the things that you go through as a leader. And I'm going to do a separate podcast that actually breaks down. I'll have to think through these phases, but I'll do a separate podcast of the phases of leadership and what it feels like to go through frontline to lead to supervisor to manager, and how people see you differently and how you should start to see yourself differently, and kind of like high level of what's expected of you in those roles. But, I can remember just trying to be everybody's friend and wanting everyone to like me, and thinking that that was the way, right? And in fact, it is a way, but it's not the way. And it's probably not the most efficient way to lead, not even close, because you're being authentic, right? You're people pleasing. And although people pleasing could be part of the equation, it's just not the main ingredient. And so, yeah, let me go ahead and stop there. It's been just about 30 minutes, and I think that that's a good start for my journey, or at least talking about my journey of where I've gotten to. And, I'll get better at storytelling, I'm sure. But this is chapter one. This was chapter one. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I've enjoyed explaining it, or giving you guys the juice. It's been a long time coming. This has been on my heart since I started my company. And I just haven't had the courage to do it. I didn't know if anybody wanted to hear it. So here I am, putting it out regardless of what, and just doing the thing anyway. I'll see you next time on another episode of Leadership from the Heart. Thanks again for listening.